Welcome to Inside the Firm, a podcast dedicated to small business owners and hosted by entrepreneurs, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. Each week, they take you on their journey of how to start, run, and grow a business by bringing you inside their architecture and real estate development firm. Get a behind-the-scenes tour of how these business leaders manage their clients and foster company culture while creating new and innovative projects. And now your hosts, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Firm, Lance. Luxury division.
He's back.
Cayko. Do you wear that every Friday? Do you wear that every day, or do you only wear it on Fridays?
I literally wear it while I sleep because it's so comfortable.
I don't think you were wearing it yesterday. I'm just going to say. I think you strategically plan Fridays. Lance, Luxury Division Cayko is here. I'm Al, Architect Builder Gore. The reason I say that is because, man, there is a shortage of everything. Labor, materials, all that.
Housing.
It is a good time if you want to transition to become not just an architect, but also a builder. If you want to know about that process, if you want to know about some of the pitfalls, if you want to know how to avoid some of that, if you want to know how to make sure that you extend your money supply, extend your reward, all that kind of stuff, go to architectsguide2to.com, architectsguide2.com.
I love it. If you haven't used ARCAT Spec Wizard before, now is the time. Spec Wizard is a patented tool that allows you to specify a product in just 3 steps, all for free and without even registering. Step 1, research and find the right products for your project at arcat.com. Step 2, use the Spec Wizard tool to select products and options. Step 3, generate a complete 3-part CSI or CSC specification based on your selections. That's it. Again, Spec Wizard is free to use and requires no registration. That's my favorite part about ARCAT, in addition to them being a sponsor of this show. So just head on over to arcat.com, that's ARCAT.com today, and try Spec Wizard. This episode was also brought to you by Pella Luxury.
Oh, look at that. Luxury division.
Who knew?
Yeah.
So experience a collection of brands that brings your creative vision to life. The luxury division of Pella is a world-class collection of brands, including Duratherm, Riley, and Benelli, all pioneers of industry who provide window and door solutions to discerning architects, the building industry, and beyond. During this new year, we all know how important it is to step back and spend time in gratitude. We appreciate all of our clients trusting us with their projects in a record-breaking year in 2021. And now we are excited and ready to take on the new year in 2022. So please support us by supporting the luxury division of Pella, because they don't push beyond the limits. They set them. So explore PellaLuxury.com/the firm. That's PellaLuxury.com/the firm. Just head over onto that link. Take a look at what they can do for you. Amazing windows, beautiful, beautiful windows for beautiful projects, and some of the best customer service I've ever seen from a company in my life. And I say that as somebody who has Pella windows in their house and has had to call the service department to get things fixed. Can't express how much we love Pella enough. Al Gore.
You know what? So, Lance, I was wrong.
What?
We were wrong. You were wrong.
And I want. Are you gonna send this? Are you gonna send this episode to my wife?
I should personally. Lance was wrong. I want that to be the title.
I know you do,
because I don't know. I wish we could have an instant post. But let me tell you what we are wrong about and why. So we have said to each other multiple times, if you're over 30, you ain't changing. You are who you are.
Yeah.
Multiple times in private conversations.
You're an adult.
Yep. And
hard to change you. Hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right?
And the reason we normally say this to each other is, let's not fool ourselves that someone's going to be different, right? Mm-hmm. But we are wrong, because people can change. And there's plenty of evidence of this. You know Michael Strahan, basically the sack master of the Giants. And then he basically became a television talk show host. That wasn't in his repertoire. He literally had to study film, study personalities, and then make this character, right? You don't know who Donald Miller is, probably. Oh, yeah, you do. Story brand, author, stuff like that. So people literally like 5 years ago would tell him, like his confidants, his best friends, like, you make impulsive decisions. And he took that in his head and was like, okay, work on that, stuff like that. Literally like 5 years later, he was talking to someone new that like joined his team like 2 years ago. And he's like, yeah, I know I make impulsive decisions. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're very thorough. You think things through. You do not make impulsive decisions. And then he's like, holy cow, I've been having this belief. Like I did change. Like it took me years, but I've been putting this belief in my head that this is what I do. And, he examined, he's like, oh, I don't do that anymore. I clearly do not do that. Mike Tyson was a crazy wild person. He's a laid back, non-crazy wild person now. People will become religious or become not religious. People will be on drugs and their life will be a shit show and they will turn it around. You can change political parties. Weight loss is a huge one. Just the whole lifestyle that comes with that. Like, you've seen transformation pictures.
Absolutely.
Like, literally just your life is a total opposite from the moment you get up to your attitude to how you interact, right?
Yeah.
But this is why there's a couple reasons why I think we thought the other way. And I think this is a good kind of conversation topic because it's the New Year's, right?
Sure.
People send New Year's resolutions.
Oh, yeah, a lot of New Year's resolutions.
Yep. So I think, though, for real change, not small change, I think real change, the problem is it might take 3, 5, 10 years. And I think people think that you're going to change in 6 months. And you're not going to change in 6 months at all. Like, if it's big, if it's a big thing, if it's like you're an impulsive person.
Yeah.
You're now a leader. This is Donald Miller.
I know what you're saying. You're not talking to me, yeah.
But you're an impulsive person. You are now a leader of a corporation. You cannot be an impulsive person. Like, that's just the way
Did you say what we are wrong about?
Yes. We literally said if you're past 30, you can't change.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So
I thought you were going to talk about that we changed when people had time off due to New Year's.
No.
That is literally what I thought you were going to bring up today, which is fine. You didn't.
That's something we can talk about maybe.
Okay.
But why we don't change? One reason is just like Donald Miller. We told that's who you are. You're impulsive. You're not going to change, right? So like you just accept that as your life, right? Another one is like, oh, it's not worth it to change. Like I'm impulsive, but that serves me because I make decisions quick. Like that might be true and might stop you from changing, right? And it might have been what led you to success. Like I make quick decisions and stuff like that. So all I'm saying is like, I think me and you need to acknowledge that people can change. We can change. Other people can change.
Yeah.
But like, it's going to work something like this. Let's just stick with impulsive. Lance, you're impulsive.
Yep.
And I told you, and it's true. It might take you a year to realize that you need to change it. You know what I mean? It might take you because you have these narratives. Yeah, I'm impulsive. I've always been impulsive, right? Mm-hmm. And then also, it serves me well. I can continue to be impulsive because it's gotten me to this point because I'm successful.
And I'm successful, exactly.
Yeah, right? Easy defense mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you do that. And then a year later, you finally, after like grinding and you heard it a couple times, you're like, okay, maybe I'm at a new level. Like literally my company has leveled up. Literally, I'm just leveling up my life. Maybe I'm leveling up my relationships. You know what I mean? Because we're only, upper 30s. We got at least till 100. We got 70 years, 60 years to go, right?
Yeah.
So finally it kicks in your head. After a year of people telling you that I am impulsive and now I actually want to go to a new level, so I will change. Well, then I think the next year in this hypothetical situation is like, oh, then you're acknowledging where you're impulsive and then you stop and then you kind of muddle through that because you're like, oh, I don't want to be impulsive, but I actually need to make this decision right now, so I'll be impulsive for this one and I won't be for this one. You're literally like a white belt, right? Or you literally like just started playing basketball, like.
Sure.
Oh, I kind of know how to dribble. I kind of know how to pass,
Mm-hmm.
And you go through the whole year and that might actually stop you too because you're like, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at like thoroughly stepping back, having perspective. Like I literally just need to make decisions like this because you're not good at it. You're just trying to dribble and you're like terrible at dribbling and other people can go through their legs and you're like, I'll never be able to dribble through my legs or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, then after a year, you've practiced it a bunch, and now you're on this. It's the third year, because the first year was just mentally like deciding that you wanted to level up. The second is all practice, and then the third year you're actually hitting your stride, where someone comes with you a decision, and you know either you can make this decision quickly, or hey, give me a second, I need some perspective right here. Blah blah blah. No big deal. The day later, you give them the answer. It literally saved time because it wasn't something that people had to redo, because of an impulsive decision. And then all of a sudden in that third year, we're talking, there's a new hire. I go, yeah, Lance, you're too impulsive. And the new hire's like, no, he's not. He's actually thorough and thoughtful. And like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's not you anymore. I think that's why it's so hard, is because people think if I tell you that you're impulsive, that you're going to change in 2 months or 6 months, things like that. You might not even recognize it until 6 months after the first 6 months.
Sure. Don't you think he? So I got the only thing I have is a question, really. So did all of this stuff? This didn't come from Mike Donald Miller, right? Like, it is hard. We don't change because we are told who we are. It is not worth it to change. It might have made you successful.
None of that came from him. This is my thoughts.
Okay, then perfect. That's perfect. Why do you think? I think you're missing one big point, and I just want to know, like, how do you think people, if people are listening to this and they're hesitant to change, for better or for worse, whatever, how do you convince somebody it's okay to be wrong, and to go, holy cow, I was wrong. Wow, was I wrong? I read all these books, and about
listen to my friends,
whatever subject. I listen to this certain set of news, etc. I even observe things anecdotally in my life, and everything seemed to point me in one direction. And then all of a sudden, I did something and was promised something based on all of that, and it didn't turn out to be true. And people who I disagreed with the whole time about everything that I thought was exactly right actually ended up being right. How do you not dig what are the mechanisms you should be working on or try to even do to not dig your heels in and go, well, I was wrong, and therefore I'm going to make a change? Because and then if you make that change, then it's all of a sudden, like, I would think, and this happens to a lot of people, then there's this cascade of, well, what else was I wrong about? And then all of a sudden they wake up.
Right. I think it's a great question. I'll give you one answer, and then I want to throw it back to you. And so I want you to think about it too. But I think we need to change our mindset from I was right, I'm right, or I'm wrong. Like I literally said the segment is we were wrong. Like, I think that needs to go away, and people need to realize, hey, when did you stop growing and learning? Like, when did you stop? Was it literally high school? Like, literally, you have kids, I have kids, right? you actually know this more than my little tiny kids.
Okay.
They're doing some wrong stuff. And that happens. I know you, like, I know you did some stupid stuff. I know I did some stupid stuff at 18, right?
Yeah.
Oh, at 22 I did less stupid stuff. At 25 I did less stupid stuff. But I think people think, oh, I'm 18, I'm adult now. And then I'm 30. This is the way I am. No. I think you are continuing to level up, and it's not right or wrong. It's literally growing. Like, has this firm stopped growing? Do we operate differently than we did 5 years ago? Yes. Were we wrong? You could say we were wrong because we're doing it differently. Like, no, we're just growing, getting input, changing, adjusting, refining. Like, I think you need to look at it like this. Like, oh, I'm refining myself. I'm refining myself into a better person. And it's very hard. And I don't think a lot of people do it. And that's why we thought before, if you're over 30, you're the way that you are. Where, the weight loss, the drug changes, the political or religious change. These are huge shifts in people's, the way they think, the way they act. It's huge. It happens. It's true. I think people need to understand that you should be refining. You should be growing. Maybe that's the word. It's not about right or wrong. It's growing. Are you growing or are you not growing?
But how do you? So let's say you were found to be completely just hypothetically speaking, hypothetical, okay?
Yeah.
All of a sudden tomorrow you wake up and we find out that actually we don't revolve around the sun. So it's a giant chain. Okay.
Sure. Something huge.
What is the coping mechanism? Because I feel like there's a coping mechanism that needs to be in place for people to, and maybe it's this, maybe it's just as simple as this, is you're listening to Al say it's okay to be wrong, and you're listening to me say it's okay to be wrong, and so you're not alone if you're wrong. Is it that simple? Is it just like, don't worry, it's okay to be wrong?
I think so. And I think the second thing, for some reason, Lance, there's this stigma of, like you say, being wrong or trying something new and failing at it. And all of a sudden, like, you're bad. You know what I mean? Like, you're bad.
There's this false stigma.
False stigma.
Yeah.
False stigma. So, like, I think you need to switch it in your mind that, you know what? Let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Other people are going to gloat and say, "Look, I was right.
Yeah.
I told Lance he was impulsive."
Yeah.
And now he's admitting it. I knew it all along. I have an ego leg up, right? Here's the elephant in the room. Let's say you never acknowledge that, right? I don't think you're impulsive, by the way, but this is Donald Mill, but it's easier to talk this way. Maybe you are. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Okay. Let's say I say that to you.
Yeah.
And you don't acknowledge it, and you don't change,
Okay.
and you are impulsive.
Okay. Yep.
I'm still right, and all of a sudden you limited your growth. You limited your growth.
Yeah.
You limited how you can lead, how you can influence. You limited your relationships because you wanted to save your ego. So now the choice becomes like, oh, you could do it in two different ways. You could say like, oh, hey, thanks, Al. Al's my best friend. He let me know. He's trying to help me. I'm gonna change. I know it's gonna take a long time. It's gonna be rough. Blah blah blah. Or if it's the other opposite way, and I'm not a friend and stuff like that, like, oh, well, screw him. Okay, maybe he's right. I just changed. I just became better. I became a better leader. I have better relationships. I have all because I was able to take that in and actually do it. Like, speaking of your son thing, like, you could fight that son thing, or you could say, oh, physics works a different way and we don't resolve and around that way, and all of a sudden that changes physics, and all of a sudden now we can do something cooler with spaceships because the whole way physics is different. Like, or you could be stuck in the same paradigm just to be right. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so you didn't admit it to hold your ego, but you're holding yourself down.
I think this is the biggest problem with society right now is that we are polarized politically, and no one can admit that they were wrong.
Yep.
Because then I don't know if they think it's showing a sign of weak. I think it's a sign of strength, especially when you publicly do it and you say, "Hey, I was wrong. I was dead wrong about this." The other thing I think that would be helpful just if people to avoid getting stuck and entrenched in taking a stance on something is like with Twitter and Facebook and all of the other social media platforms involved, we have this instant judgmental culture. We have this instant take culture. In other words, like, I got to give my take. I got to give my opinion. Instant opinion culture. One of the things I try to do when, like, let's say there's a big political event that happens, I actually try to give it at least 24 to 48 hours before I decide what is real and what is not. And what I look at is I look at two things. I look at what is the corporate media telling me, and then I look at what are the people who typically rail against the corporate media telling me, and then I try to make up my mind from there. And it's I'm not going to sit down here and say the corporate media is right most of the time, because they're not. But I think the truth is somewhere. It's somewhere like in that journey is where you find it. Those two things would help society a lot, and it would be really nice if we got back to that arena. It's either that or just put your head in the sand, which is not helpful.
Yeah, I think if you think that you're right, you're gonna. This goes not just changing yourself, but like how you operate. You're just gonna get confirmation bias. right? You're just going to get confirmation bias if you don't do what you were talking about. And then all of a sudden, all you're doing is leading people who already agree with you further away from everyone else.
And to be fair to everybody who's listening, like the truth is very hard to find right now. I think it takes a long, long time for like sometimes years after you see all of these headlines for the truth to finally come out. And then that problem that I see happening often is then once the truth comes out, like it kind of gets acknowledged for like a day and then it gets buried. So just to have some empathy with everybody, like figuring out what the right stance is on something. It's not so much about that. It's just about trying to uncover the truth in all the craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So speaking of the truth, one thing I wanted to...
Does that... I think you had a really good question. Does that kind of button up the coping mechanism? Is that you literally have to look at it like, am I going to limit myself for my ego, or am I going to grow above it?
And the example I will give you is when Alex and I... one of the very first projects I think that we tried to team up on together in college, Alex hit me with a pretty sharp tongue, and I probably will never forget it, and said like... something to the tune of it's something like you're going to limit yourself if you don't acknowledge that not all of your ideas are right. And when using that word limit is very important to me, because especially at that point in time, because I think it was like second year, it's their third year of architecture studio, and I think most budding architects suck. At that point, right? You haven't had the 10,000 hours of practice yet. And it was like, well, I know my personal goal at NDSU architecture was to be literally the best of the graduating class. And I was like, well, if this guy who I respect his opinion, and all of a sudden I'm shooting it down just because I want to be right, because of my ego, is limiting myself, then I'm literally shooting myself in the foot. That's
literally the perfect example, because everyone knows that you should be college was 10, 15 years ago. If you didn't grow in 10, 15 years for your ego, like you literally just shot yourself into the foot. Like,
and you're always,
because everyone back then, like, that's what we're talking about, is that don't stop growing. People, do not stop growing, because in 15 years from now, you might be like, man, if I would have just only thought my own ways and only just put blinders on and just nail, like, I would be you'd be in the same position.
Bingo. So speaking of trying to uncover the truth, one thing that, so we've been in operation here on the Colorado Front Range for over 10 years now. And through that 10 years, we have seen many wildfires occur. So if you have been watching the news, you saw that Boulder County made national headlines. And we had over 1,000 homes. It's like 1,078 now. I don't know if you know that. Just completely destroyed.
Yep.
In Boulder County, Louisville, Superior, those kind of towns is where it occurred. One of our employees actually was affected. His house did not burn down, but it was very close, very scary. My son and his mother, same thing, very close, very scary. Actually, when I called my son over the day after when it occurred. He was literally screaming on the phone, swear words, and I wasn't mad at him because I was like, yeah, there's a fire. And he was like, holy F, there's the flames are right here. So like they got out of there. Anyway, one thing I've always wondered, and that Al has too, is we've never really seen any inquiries come after a fire like that. And I think it's completely normal and human for you to start thinking about, like, as a business owner and somebody who performs building services, architectural design services, engineering services, or even the realtors, about like what is going to happen to these folks. And then my biggest question has always been, are they going to rebuild? So what I did, and what I want to unpack, and I'm going to hit record on the old computer here, for anybody who is watching on YouTube, is that I've always wanted to unpack and see if people actually, gosh darn it, I gotta shut down the recorder, exit, there we go, turn it back on, is if people actually rebuild. Like, is there been any studies to say if people rebuild? I will tell the audience that surprisingly, we actually got a call from somebody who does want to rebuild on their property. But it's tricky. And the circumstances, and as the circumstances play out, and if we end up winning over this client, I will happily keep people abreast without giving out names of like why this particular person built versus maybe who is not going to in the future. Because there's a lot of moving parts and the government's involved and there might be these buyouts and stuff like that, right? I don't know. But pulled up 3 articles because I looked up, I was just like searching on the internet last night, trying to get ahead of today's episode of, do people rebuild after forest fires? So I found 3 articles and they relate, and they're from, one's from 2019, one from 2020, and one is from 2021. So if you're looking on YouTube right now, the first one's from NPR, and it's titled "The Camp Fire Destroyed 11,000 Homes." And I'm actually
That's a lot of homes.
So this was the biggest fire in. If anybody forgets about this, this was the biggest fire technically in the United States as it pertains to like a loss of capital and properties. Right.
I think that one was started too.
Yes, this was an arson fire. So that's why it's called the campfire destroyed. So basically, this was in Paradise, California. Right. And without getting into the nitty-gritty details of exactly, reading through the article and stuff like that, I wanted to break down the numbers, right? So at one point, the fire displaced, from the article, close to 50,000 people. The Camp Fire was estimated to be the most expensive natural disaster in the world last year, just removing toxic debris almost cost $2 billion. The federal government is paying for about 3/4, including $200 million in direct aid to victims. So that's what I'm saying. Even Boulder County, we are hearing through the grapevines there's going to be some mass intervention going on. So what that translated to was, going on further in the article, was in Paradise, more than 11,000 houses burned to the ground. So basically 11 times the destruction we just saw in Boulder County, right? Here's the critical part. A year later, so from 2018 to 2019 when this article was written, only 11 had been built.
Yep.
So I'm writing this down because you'll see a trend as I go through these articles, right?
Can I read a line?
Yeah, so 11 out of 11,000 have been were rebuilt within 1 year. Go ahead, Al.
Jones said, this is the mayor, those few who are rebuilding consider themselves pioneers. And I don't want to overstretch an analogy, but I almost think it's one way you could think about yourself, about if you're wrong and you have to rebuild a personality or something like that. Like, are you strong enough to rebuild or not?
Yep. One more line from this article, and then we'll jump to the next one so I can start breaking down these numbers for everybody. Because this is a question I think all architects, especially in the Western United States who listen to us, you probably have this question, is like, is it worth it for me to market to these folks? Like, is this actually going to increase business? And no, it is not predatory. I'm just saying this is a natural reaction to think about this stuff. Paradise is a shell of what it was. The population went from 26,000 to an estimated 3,000 today. So there's also that population number. So a second article I found, and I apologize if you're looking on the screen here, it doesn't have any photos. I actually had to put my laptop in airplane mode in order to read this article. It's from the San Francisco Chronicle. It's titled, "People Are Soul Tired." Soul, S-U-L. 2 years after the Camp Fire destroyed Paradise, only a fraction of the homes have been rebuilt. So this article came out in 2020, so 1 year later, from NPR's. And looking through it, basically, they do get down to the numbers here. Their numbers are a little off too, right? They're right on with NPR, where they're saying 19,000 structures, including 14,000 homes, were destroyed. So but the ratio you'll see is a little different, right? So now, let's just use the 11,000 number as the base point too, and just say that NPR is 100% right. In this article from the San Francisco Chronicle, they go on to say, as of this week, 440 single-family homes and 70 units in multifamily buildings have been rebuilt. Only a fraction of what was lost. Members of roughly 500 households are living in RVs, and an estimated 5,000 people now live in Paradise. So they went from 3,000 people living up to 5,000. Obviously, more people are moving back. But let's just write this down. At the 2 year, there was, what did I say, 400? 440 divided by, let's just use 11,000 so we have a common denominator.
Yep.
So we've increased. What percent is that, Al? 440?
That's
4,000% or something like that?
yeah, but it's gonna be
Yeah,
like
4,000%.
one out of 30, something like that.
Yep. That's another way to think about it. Okay, moving ahead in the timeline. Now we're on to
3 years.
3 years. Yep. So,
Interesting.
So this article, right? It was pretty cool. I could find these actually.
Yeah.
So this article's from Cayko.com, something like that. On the Rise. The title is "On the Rise: 3 years after the fire, the rebuild continues." So they give you a description of that again, and then moving on through the article here, that they end up giving us some numbers about how much has rebuilt, right? So this one is saying that now the population growth 3 years later is up from, I think I just said 5,000. Now it's up to 6,000. So people are still moving back, right? And then as of today, now from the article, so quote, it is encouraging to see the number of certificates of occupancy increasing weekly, Solasek said. It seems like yesterday that we were celebrating 500 and then 1,000. As of today, so this would be 2021, as of today, we are at 1,083 single-family homes rebuilt and 220 multifamily. I'm only using the single-family
Yep.
as the metric here, just to keep things clean.
They're close to 10%.
So now they're close to 10% after 3 years. So what that means, if we just say that within 3 years, you're going to have 10% basically built,
Yep.
right? If we have 1,000 houses, round number, that burnt down in Boulder County, only in 3 years are you going to have
100.
100 that get rebuilt.
Yeah.
What do you think about that ratio?
This is what I think happened. I think the first year, you have to move out. You have to set up in a new place. All of a sudden you do that. And then now you have to decide what you're going to do. Who knows how long that takes? And maybe start the process. Year 2, you get the plans. You're going through the building department. Year 3, you're building. Like, obviously some people are faster than that, but like, it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
So I wanted to bring that up just again. There's a lot of folks that even if you're on, like, let's say you're on the East Coast and there's a hurricane, I'm interested to know, like, okay, it destroys a neighborhood. Are the numbers sort of the same where you only have in the first year, let's just call it 1% gets rebuilt, right? And then the next year, 5% of the total, and then the next year, 10%. So you're only increasing by about 4% on top of the other percentage increased every year.
But next year, it might not be. You might not build only 1,000. You might build 2,000. So now you're at 3,000 total. So now you have almost a third of the neighborhood. Two things to think about that. One, if you don't want to be living in a constant construction zone, you might stagger a little bit and not start the process until year 2. And another thing too is like, I think people should realize, and I don't think an immediate decision is going to be made. I don't think fire burns down, people are calling architects. Some pioneers are. A couple pioneers are calling. 6 months, 8 months, a year and a half might be when the majority of people are like, okay, now I'll come back. Now,
and
everything's figured out.
And if there's any people that were affected by this fire who are listening to this today, I just want to give you some free advice. And the free advice is, please do not buy plans online. What I find is what happens is when people buy plans online, I get these calls maybe once every 2 weeks, something like that. And the homeowner calls me and they say, well, we went to the building department and they actually need a local architect to do this. And I go, okay, what did you buy exactly? And then sometimes they buy the whole thing. And I go, okay. And by the whole thing, that means they've got a PDF and they got a CAD file. What I end up telling them and what they end up confessing to me is that they've already talked to other architects and engineers and they're hoping that we would be different in that we could just kind of mark up the drawing, stamp it, and be done. And I go, nope, that's not the way it works. Ethically and literally for my own peace of mind, professionally, we have to basically take ownership of the drawings. What do I mean by that? Like, we're basically going to have to recreate them in our software and truly understand the design so that we can actually end up, putting our metaphorical stamp on it, right? Not even our literal stamp, just our metaphorical one. So if you find a house, the actual literal advice then is, if you find a house online that you like, just bookmark it and then go talk to an architect, and don't spend any money. That's the best path forward, because no matter what, the building department's going to come in and they're going to say it needs a local architect. You got to do all the engineering. And to be fair to the architects, I guarantee you're going to have some changes. I guarantee that plan you see online is not going to be the one that is perfectly exactly how you want it, and you might be trying to fool yourself and even the architect into thinking that's what it's going to be because you're trying to save some money. With the architect services, there's always changes, which is fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. I just have one question. I know it doesn't really fit in. Oh, I guess I'm jumping ahead, but that's okay. I'll just interject this quickly. When you were told how early to show up to a meeting or an interview, how long were you told to get there?
15 minutes.
Okay. I was told 10 minutes. 15 minutes is probably a fine answer too. I want to tell everyone, do not do that. That is way too early. That is way too early. Because what you do, so we have a space where people can come and sit, but you literally are now putting pressure on those people that you have the meeting to either hurry up or come entertain you or something like that. If you show up 10 minutes early, sit in your car until 2 minutes before. I'm serious. Why are you showing up 10 minutes early? What are you doing? Sit in your car. Maybe go walk, make sure you know where the front door is and all that, and then go back into your car. You just need to show up 2 minutes before.
Yeah.
Not
I
10
agree
minutes.
with you. That's great. That's a good point.
Side rant done.
Okay.
Big rant, Lance.
On to the big rant. And this should blow everybody's mind, I think. If you have been a longtime listener of this show, especially over the last year, you've probably heard Lance LARP on about 40% of all the U.S. dollars in existence being printed in 12 months. Guess what? That number has changed, Al. Are you surprised?
50%.
50%. He says 50%. If you're watching on the YouTube, you probably see my screen right now, and actually it is 80% of all U.S. dollars in existence were printed in the last 22 months.
Wow.
From $4 trillion in January 2020 to $20 trillion in October 21. Mind you, the debt, if you go to debtclock. I think it's debtclock.org or debtclock.com. Let me look real quick. USdebtclock.org. The U.S. national debt is 30 trillion, 29 trillion if you want it, but I'm rounding up, right? Why not? By the time we're done with this podcast, it'll probably be 30 trillion, right? So this article came out from the same entity that wrote it before, and they just basically updated it. It was posted on December 18th, 2021, so it's still recent, but it only became news to me because I saw it on somebody else's social media post, and I was like, wait a minute, is that true? And they put it in meme form, so it was like, come on, are you just making this up? And then they gave me the link to the article, and I have just been shook because of it for the past 24 hours. So
You have been.
Right? I can't quit talking about it. So 80%. So again, this is techstartups.com, and it's a short article, so I would like to go through it. So basically, last year, this is from the article. Last year, we wrote a piece titled 40% of U.S. dollars in existence were printed in the last 12 months. One of our most popular articles on January 6, 2020, the U.S. Federal Reserve had around $4 trillion. However, a lot has changed since then. The Fed has accelerated its quantitative easing.
Printing money.
Widely referred to as printing money, to increase the liquidity of U.S. banks and inject trillions of dollars into the economy. The Fed's addiction to money printing has kept the party going for Wall Street while fueling inequality. Today, the stock market and cryptocurrency are at record highs, while income and wages remain almost the same. The Federal Reserve continues to print more money, further devaluing the dollars and enslaving millions of Americans. Now, a little over a year after our last piece, the Federal Reserve has updated the number. Sadly, it's no longer 40% of the U.S. dollars that were printed since 2020, not 50% as Al Gore predicted, and not even 70% since January 2020. The U.S. has printed nearly 80% of U.S. dollars in existence.
Are you so blown away because, like, do you think about it like, okay, whenever they started printing money in 1870, whatever, whoever knows when it was, okay, the next year they printed money, the next year printed money, and the next year printed money. They probably only printed like 1 to 3% of the money supply every year. And then like in 1940s, they printed literally like $4 billion and then $5 billion the next year and then $6 billion. And then in the last 2 years, they're like all of that.
Yes, that's why.
All of that in the last 2 years. All of that.
Yeah. Whether you're listening terrestrially and maybe pull over on the side of the road because you're shocked and you're looking at this article.
That's what you're doing.
Or you're watching on YouTube, what Al described verbally is in a chart, and that's why I'm so blown away by it. It's because when you look at the chart that they give, and I think that's what gets missed in this headline, because everybody's so shocked when they see it, is Alex is up at the TV screen looking at it right now behind the camera there, and that's what's so creepy about it is the way it shoots up at the end here is alarming. It's very alarming. And if you know anything about there's I can't remember what kind of economics term they put on this, but when you see these hockey curves, it's usually it's usually like the last death throws. Yes, that's exactly it. Of something.
Right.
Of some kind of thing. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be the virus. Could, infection rates. It could be like, that's the last death throes, and then it all comes down. You know what I'm saying?
Well, are you getting at, too, like, when you see these, you think about, you could say Weimar Germany, but you could also say the tulip nonsense.
Tulip craze.
God, what was it? Beanie Babies.
Yep.
Right?
Bitcoin.
Maybe. Who knows? But here, so, God, what was it? It's kind of like, I don't have a good analogy, but like,
I know, yeah.
If you relate it to anything, like, oh man, I don't even know what to relate it to. But like, this is why I think you're freaked out is that, what does that mean? Like, because
it freaks me out because there has to be a consequence. I mean, I know we live in an insane world where it seems like,
or a reaction, equal and opposite reaction.
There you go. It's the physics of it that freaked me out. Exactly. It's the physics of it. Yep. And you can't deny physics because we still agree on this in far as objective reality that like equal and opposite reactions.
Yep.
Occur. Common physics.
And here's what we go to. This is going to sound absurd, right? But I have to do absurdity to make a point. Okay. Let's just give everyone $1 million. Like I would, if you gave me $1 million, that'd be great. Gave you $1 million, that'd be great.
He already knows what he would do with it, and I do too.
Yep. Okay. But we're going to do that to everyone. Okay? So, everyone working at McDonald's, at the bank, at wherever, now says, I have $1 million, I'm going to quit. Then they go out and they're like, hey, I want some McDonald's. And literally this might take 6 months or 4 months or maybe even 2 weeks if you gave everyone $1 million.
Sure.
Oh, for someone to work at McDonald's? Yeah. Pay me $1,000 an hour. Then I'll come work at McDonald's. If you don't pay me $1,000 an hour, I ain't going to come work. I already got $1 million. Yeah. Okay. So now your nuggets cost $1,000. It's like, is that the reaction that's going to happen? And then it's like, what is even happening here?
What is even happening?
Yeah.
What is even happening?
And here's why. Okay. Some people might think like, that's not too big of a deal. Everything is going up in price 20%, 30%. If you own assets, your assets become cheaper in the broad scheme of things. I think this is the scary part, is that everyone was operating under rules of how the economy works, right?
A supposed level playing field.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now when you do that, you just go, why can't the government just print money for this, print money for this?
And why should they tax me?
Yep. Why should they tax them? But literally like, oh, we're just going to print, let's just use space because I talk about it all the time. We're just going to print $1 trillion. And then all of a sudden we can have all this space stuff. And then Boeing goes like, yeah, this is just fake money.
It detaches us from reality.
Exactly.
So is the reaction going to be a reaction back to reality? And we'll get into what that is going to be at the end of the article here, I think.
Well, this is what I think. I went over. Were you there when I went on this rant? We went through the recession, right? And it confused me because it was a bank recession and everyone in my firm was competent. Everyone in your firm was competent. You knew how to draw buildings. You knew how to make buildings. You were willing to draw buildings.
Yes.
And make buildings. Everyone else was willing to like do whatever work. And all of a sudden the economy all crashed. It's like, man.
What did I do?
What? You went and got other work.
No. I meant that.
Yeah, what did I do? Yep.
That was the thought, right?
What did I do? But also like everyone is here like ready and willing to work and continue to do things and generally fine with society and all that and the arrangement. Now you have this. It breaks the system somehow. Just like all their funny money in 2008 broke the system. I think there's a difference now. And the difference now is a whole bunch of baby boomers are retiring. And I'm sorry about this, baby boomers are about to say, but you guys have been in power for a long time and kind of let this happen. So like you're kind of screwing things up. Yeah. But to be generous, man, there's a lot of institutional knowledge in baby boomers. There's a lot of institutional knowledge. Every time you have a problem with the planning department or the building department, you just have to go up to the chain to the guy on top and be like, we're technically millennials maybe, or Xers, like these stupid millennials and Xers, you don't say it like this, are literally making us do stupid stuff that makes no sense. And they're like, yeah, that makes no sense. Like, let's, like, they can cut through stuff. All of them are retiring. A lot of people don't believe in capitalism, in fair trade. Some capital, like pharma, which people are now believing are great, have been screwing people over for years. Yeah. Like the problem is when you look at society and you look at how things are run, like everything you can see problems in it right now. So all of a sudden this big reset happens like in 2008. But in 2008, people were like, what? Everything's kind of generally fine. Like we understand how the system goes. I think the system could break, not just the money. Only the money broke last time. Only the money broke. Well, and a couple and some morals. I think now if it does,
the money literally broke. It froze up. Yeah, keep going.
I think now if the money breaks, I think baby boomers retire even more. I think the supply chain gets messed up even more. Yeah. I think they break the rules even more, and then they just pay people to stay at home. Yeah. I think that compounds on itself. I think a lot of things happen badly.
Exactly. Basically, it's already this gummed up system. So now the result is going to be kind of a seizing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you can't get a nut off of a bolt because you didn't put anti-seize liquid on there before you tightened it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, I think the reaction is, hey, they broke all the rules.
Why can't I?
They broke all the rules.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean in like violence or anything like that. I mean on a deeper philosophical level of, there's no rules now.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to the article. To understand the magnitude of the Fed's printing money, we need to go back 22 months ago. At the start of 2020, there was $4.0192 trillion in circulation. On January 4th, 2021, the number increased to $6.7 trillion. Then the Fed went into overdrive by October 2021. The number climbed to $20.0831 trillion in circulation. What started as an emergency policy to shield the economy from the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 has led to further devaluation of U.S. dollars. Since March 2020, the Federal Research buys $80 billion in treasuries and $40 billion in housing-backed securities each month, pushing the Fed's balance sheet to $8.66 trillion as of December 2021. One thing that one of my employees and a couple other friends also brought up too is right away and you might even be thinking of this too, listener that I'm speaking to, is that, how much of the spending bills passed through Congress had to do with this? None. That's what's really scary about it, is because, again, to go back to what they're saying in the article, which is true, is basically they're buying treasuries. They're buying their own treasuries that they're issuing to just keep the liquid going so that we don't seize up. That's why this debt is really scary, because it actually has nothing to do with technical government spending through the bills. Yeah. However, Fed's asset and bond purchases are just are just is of the ways the federal research injects trillions. The Federal Reserve injects trillions into the economy. In addition, the U.S. government also issued stimulus checks to millions of employed Americans. Where did that money come from? The government had to borrow by selling its debt in the form of U.S. Treasury bonds and other types of securities. Then after the bonds are sold, the Federal Reserve gets to work and starts printing money. So that's how they are literally making the money out of thin air. Do you understand that? Like, they're making two forms of paper. One is money and one is Treasury bonds out of thin air.
Yeah.
And selling them to each other. Alex and I, if people believed that Alex and Lance could make money and they believed and they could use it to trade with people, like, we could literally do this. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, making some of these coins, but the only thing is that some of these coins pretend like they're actually doing work.
Yeah. Moving ahead to kind of the last part, Alex did bring this up. Is the Federal Reserve repeating the same mistakes of 1921 Weimar Germany? So if history is any guide, what the Federal Reserve is doing now has been tried throughout history as the Federal Reserve continues to print trillions of dollars out of thin air with no productivity to back it up. At some point down the road, the world will finally lose faith in the U.S. dollar as a global currency and conclude that it no longer makes sense to store their wealth in U.S. dollars. Today, the Federal Reserve appears to be following in the footsteps of 1923 Germany's Weimar Republic. Shortly after World War I, the country has often been cited as a classic unending money printing. Between 1921 and November 1923, the highest monthly inflation rate rose by over 30,000% in Weimar Germany. It all started in 1921 when Germany stopped backing its currency with gold, just like we did in 1971. That was me, not the article. And instead fired up its money printing machine, similar to what the Federal Reserve is doing today, in order to finance the war. Then the money printing machines continued printing after the war to help pay for reparations imposed upon Germany by its allies. In closing, then there's a video you'll see at the end that I highly recommend everybody watch, because it shows what happened in 1971, which is exactly what happened in 1921 with Germany. And here we are. So what does this mean for you? I think you need to prepare yourself for some sort of reaction to this. And you've heard our theories. It's up to you to make up your own decision. I'm just here to report on this and continue reporting on this kind of level of printing because it affects you in every single way.
Absolutely. I think we have to skip Nick Reed's because I got to leave in about 6 minutes or so.
We're skipping Nick's reads today?
Yeah, we'll do it. Don't worry, Nick. We'll do it next week.
And we're skipping some other articles that we were going to go over, but that's okay. We can handle that next period. Yep. Go ahead. A.R.E. Jeopardy?
We'll bring down the crew. All right. Question number 1. Mechanical screens, according to the IBC, can exceed the maximum height of a building, right? But the screens themselves are not to exceed how many feet? Does that question make sense? Cool. Is it A, 6 feet, B, 4 feet, C, 12 feet, or D, 18 feet? This is going to be a pure guess. I understand that. And I asked the question because I didn't even know this is a rule. So it's more to know that this is a rule than to know the actual answer. Okay. C. Good guess. It is 18. It is D, not C. I thought that was crazy. 18 feet seems really, really high. If you are type 1 construction, you can go as high as you want, though. Caveat.
You can do whatever you want, type 1.
Question 2. This is a good one to know, too. Roofs that are less than what slope must be analyzed to determine if ponding will result in the progressive deformation of roof members. Okay? Is that slope A, less than a quarter inch to a foot, B, an eighth inch, C, 3%, D, 3/4 inch? So at what slope do you then need to analyze the structure? All right. A, a quarter inch. So if you are at a quarter inch, you don't have to. If you're below it, you're supposed to analyze the structure to see if ponding will now deform your structure.
Yeah. All right, number 3. What method doesn't preserve features on a site? A, minimizing disturbance of terrain. B, evaluating condition of existing features. C, repairing or replacing site fixtures. Or D, taking note of existing site features. Do we need... Okay. What method doesn't preserve features on a site? A, minimizing disturbance of terrain. B, evaluating condition of existing features. C, repairing or replacing site features. D, taking note of existing site features. What do we got? We got D, C, B. The correct answer is D, taking note of existing site fixtures. Because all you're doing is taking note. There's no action. What was B analyzing? Evaluating condition of existing site features.
That's evaluating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because note versus evaluation, I think, is way different. Because you'd just be like, oh, there's a tower, but then this other one would be like, oh, there's a tower, but it's in need of repair. Just making it up. What do we got for zero? Goose egg 2, 1. All right.
All right.
Mr. Jason's in the lead. In the context of architectural design, the delivery of water and the elimination of waste via water handling systems is part of which type of architectural service? I'll repeat that if it's convoluted. In the context of architectural design, the delivery of water and the elimination of waste via water handling systems is part of which type of architectural service? A, this is not the architect's scope. B, the architect's scope of basic services. C, the architect's scope of extra services. D, the MEP's scope.
I can't believe I would not get this right. There's your hand.
Taking away his license.
Yep.
D, A, B. The correct answer is B. Who got B? Katie? Awesome.
So now it's a tie.
All right.
Tiebreaker.
Good guess, Katie. I mean, you knew that the whole time.
It is the architecture scope of basic service.
So it's technically in your services, I guess. I mean, I don't know, because you're just showing like toilets and stuff. I don't get it.
Your license is removed.
Yeah, mine's gone now.
All right, tiebreaker. A building's plumbing system typically contains check valves, globe valves, gate valves, and angle valves to control water flow. Which of these would be most appropriate to use somewhere water flow needs to be completely shut off for maintenance? Got it.
Gate valve.
A gate valve was the answer.
There we go. Gate valve. Good job, Katie. She will pick where we're eating, but I got to head out. So, Lance, take us out.
If you like this episode, please share it with a friend, a colleague, your mom, someone. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, and we will see you next week.